Yeah, it's been a good week, competitive week. A little bit of extra work gone in. Lads, as always, have applied themselves brilliantly, and the hope is that our preparations and some of our debriefing from last week is productive as we move towards New York.
We are going to open the floor for questions. Alert me through by raising the hand raising button if you have a question for Coach. Tim, kick it up.
Hey Gary, it's so early in the year to be playing your second and possibly likely final game against a team. How weird is it for you to know that you're just 7 or 8 games removed from playing them, and already kind of completing the season series against them?
Yeah, it's a little bit strange, as you say. It wouldn't be usual circumstances, but it's not the first time I've seen teams, run into each other as quickly as we are going to be with New York. There'll be some familiarity from the opening game of the season. There'll be some emotions that are still attached to that opening game of the season. No doubt both teams are in a slightly different spot. There hasn't been a huge amount that's gone on since then, but certainly the results that have taken place, I know that 1 or 2 additions for them in different areas. I think Rodriguez will be the most notable one for the New York group who didn't play against us, if I'm right. Other than that, the usual challenges apply for us away from home against a team that I would think are going to slowly but surely round it into some form. They are always a very, very competitive and creative group, and I would think they're working tirelessly to find the solution to 1 or 2 of their problems.
We are going to go next to Drake Hills. Drake?
Hey Gary, so for New York, it seems, I believe this is their first game at City. They've been playing their home games at Yankee Stadium. I'm curious, going into this week, maybe what intel about dimensions, how you guys are preparing for playing at a baseball stadium for the first time, because you guys played Red Bulls in New York, respectively. You guys have always played at Red Bull Arena. So I'm curious how you guys are preparing for that.
Yeah, it is a little bit different. Some of the guys have, I think, sampled Yankee Stadium, but I'm not sure too many have been to this Mets arena. So yes, some different markings on the fields to tighten up the dimensions. I do think it will be, as we can all see on any of the footage, it's a slightly quicker game. New York are normally terrific at home. They play their field well, as you would expect. But for us, just probably getting a good glimpse of it when we get there and warming into the game is going to be a key for us. Making sure that we're tight and we're tough to play against as always, and finding out a little bit more of the dynamic of the stadium and the field as we go along.
We'll continue with Ben Wright.
Yeah, Gary, through 7 games, your defense is putting up pretty elite numbers. I think it's like 0.29 goals allowed per game. But the offense has been a little bit more up and down. And you've talked about balance and like getting the team balanced right a couple of times in the past, but how do you kind of maybe try to find a little bit more attacking production without sacrificing what's been excellent defensive performances?
Yeah. I think if you look at the teams that we've put out, predominantly at home to date, we've had 2 out-and-out wide players, as we would class them, in Fafa and Jacob. In the opening game against New York, obviously Randall took up that withdrawn striker role that Hanny would normally fill. But I don't think there's any... I've certainly not looked at it and thought we're cutting any corners on what we're trying to get out on the field creatively. I do think at the moment, and of course we've had plenty of discussions on it, there's still growth to be had in some of these relationships. There's still some development to be had in certain individuals' own game, where their form is, how creative they are, what sort of standards they're setting. And sometimes it does take the early stages of any season to get into full flow, although I think we can safely say we would all, players included, staff and anyone on looking, that we'd love to see the forwards get on the score sheet, however that comes about. And we'd love to see these two wide players just offering a little bit more production. There's been some excellent spells and some really bright moments. But in terms of actual production in the group, I think we're still chasing that. And, I'm patient enough to keep working with it. I think the supporting mechanisms around it are very, very good. It's not as if we've played with 7 or 8 defensive players on the field. We are looking for those defining moments in very tight games against good teams, and we'll continue to do so.
Tim, go ahead with your follow-up.
Hey, Gary, you mentioned Randall there. I was just kind of curious because of how much Fafa and Jacob have settled into those spots. Where do you see Randall fitting in when he is fit to return? And are you still anticipating that's that first U.S. Open Cup game? And what do you do? What do you do when you have too many guys for not enough spots in the 11?
First of all, the Open Cup game is a real possibility. There's 1 or 2 things we're still working through with him, but I think the player as well as the medical staff are seeing that as a possibility for his first minutes. With regards to added competition and quality in wide areas or anywhere else, to get the very best out of people, and I know I've said this before, you need competition, you need players feeling that pressure. What we also know about Randall is he's very different to the 2 wide guys that are playing at the moment. There's a lot of pace, a lot of vertical action going on with those wide players, and they're a real threat beyond, as we know, a real problem for defenders. Randall's slightly different in the fact that he is a little bit more comfortable coming inside. He is a bit more comfortable coming underneath the strikers. And of course his relationship with Hanny and CJ and Teal has got much greater foundations than maybe the 2 wide guys that have been playing predominantly at the moment. So I'm looking forward to the fact, I'm not worried about the fact, I'm looking forward to the fact that Randall will be back in the group. There'll be tremendous competition. We'll have far more options coming off the bench, creative options, which can only be good for the team. It certainly puts me under more pressure, and I'm sure I'll be having some more difficulties pre-game, whatever game that is. But it's a nice place to be.
Ray Hills.
Yeah, it's just a 2-part follow-up for you, Gary, regarding how you guys, especially playing on the road and going up against New York at Citi Field. How does the dimension, I guess the way the field plays, how does that go about tactically? The way you guys spacing, obviously the way you want your attackers and your fullbacks to play. And then the second part would be, I guess, in relation to the Randall question, do you kind of see maybe different roles when you start talking about, I guess, that 3 of Hani, Fafa, and Jacob in terms of, again, the spacing and the positioning of how you guys want to play on the road?
Yeah, look, first of all, the dimensions of their field, and we're being told it's 110 by 70. I wouldn't be surprised if it's narrower than that. I think they are the minimum dimensions that have to be put down. I don't know. I've not been there. So we're expecting that given there's less surface area, it will be quicker, it will be more intense. In all fairness, whenever I watch New York play there, and of course they have more experience, they play terrifically well on that field. There's a lot of talent and creativity in their group. So there'll be a lot of respect for them as we go to their home field for sure. What we have to be able to achieve is periods in that game where we can not only manage the game, but we can draw the momentum away from this terrific New York City side, and show that we are a threat. I don't think we've gone anywhere at the moment and just sat in our half of the field and waited for the final whistle. We're well beyond that now. We've got players in the group who are more than capable of taking the game to any opponent. So we have to get the right phases of the game in place, earn the right to actually play some football on their stadium. And that earning the right in the early exchange is always key to any competition that you're involved with. As far as Randall goes again, just keep in mind that each and every player has their own DNA. The DNA of Randall is very different to the DNA of Jacob or Fafa or even Alex or Luke. They've all got their own different nuances and qualities and craft and talent. And Randall's is a very adaptable one. We've seen him play as a withdrawn striker against New York City to a terrific degree. He's intelligent. He's capable of keeping the ball in tight areas. I think he's more adaptable than some of the guys we've spoken about in connecting in tight areas and seeing, those areas to work out of pressurised situations. And of course, his experience with the group, again, is a key. Those relationships have grown over a far longer period of time. So, again, I'm looking forward to having him back, whenever that is, and he will give us a very different look and dimension. How that is used and against what opponents is, of course, the key.
We have time for 2 more questions. We'll go with Valer, and then we'll finish with Ben Wright. Valer, go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, there were a couple obstacles last season for you. One of them was that it was Nashville SC was in the Western Conference, and then the other one was the building of George Park and not being able to play at home for a good amount of time. We're 7 weeks into the season. You're back in the Eastern Conference. Have you been able to reap any of those rewards, and do you feel any different from last year?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I honestly, coming back to the East has reminded me again how tough this conference is. And there are some slightly different qualities, I do certainly feel, from that far West Coast group of teams. You start coming through the Midwest, and of course, the likes of Kansas and Minnesota, who themselves have spent time in the Eastern Conference, are different again to I think they're more suited to maybe the Eastern Division. But what we can say is that this division is immensely competitive. I think there's through the challenges that we've had thus far, we can see that yet again games are going to be ultra tight. They're not, for the most part, hugely expansive games. We ran into some games, certainly on the West Coast last year, against the LA teams in particular, who stretched the field ever so well. Technicians in the team that are all about possession and winning that possession-oriented period and tendencies in the game. Whereas I do think there are a lot of teams in the Eastern Conference that are a little bit more prepared, if we like, to mix the game up physically. There's a different dynamic to their look and the way that they go about their business. I'm not saying there's any difference necessarily in, how they go about being creative or that excitement in their group. But at this point in time, we've played some very good teams. If you look at the makeup of our first 7 games, I think I'm right in saying that only Montreal are they outside of the playoff groups at the minute. Mm-hmm. Out of the 7 games that we've played some good sides, and I think that again has maybe just highlighted to us what a tough season it will be again.
Ben, take us home.
Yeah, Gary, I asked earlier about defense, and obviously Nick was brought in to be a pretty big part of that. With kind of fixtures starting to pile up, we're getting into like international duty for Walker and Shaq here, and then Open Cup coming up. Are you still happy with the defensive depth? And I guess Josh kind of has the nominal third center back, or do you have any concerns as the season starts to get busier?
Yeah, I do think first and foremost losing a player of Nick's capabilities as early as we did would be a difficulty for any team. And certainly it puts us straight into a challenging situation if we have any problems. You're right to highlight the fact that we've got windows coming up where we're going to lose players as well, and that's without any suspensions or any other difficulties that we could run into. We have some players in-house that I certainly would love to see more of. And when I say more of, I mean in the cut and thrust of minutes of the game. So the likes of Josh, Lawrence, seeing guys like Daniel Lovitz play a slightly different role, maybe inside and as a central defender. I certainly wouldn't draw a line through that. But what I would say is we have opportunities coming up in the Open Cup, if there's no chance before then, to see some of these guys and what they can give us when called upon. But also on the back end of that, make no mistake, we're looking to try and add a body to the group if at all possible. But as per usual, I think it's got to be the right body. It's got to be the right individual who can help us, who is going to offer the right qualities to the group. And if that player comes up and it's possible to do that deal, then I think we're in a position to do that. It's just that I think we want to try and exhaust the players that we have here. They deserve that opportunity. They've shown very, very well in pre-season, and I want to give them that chance. But if it doesn't work, then I think we've got to be ready to look at other options.
Preparation's been great. Recovering from the last game and just preparing for New York. It was a very good side at home, so we've been doing our max. And going back home to my first birth city is really exciting to see all my family and get out there.
We are going to open the floor for questions. We'll kick it off with Ben Wright.
Yeah, Fafa, I'm kind of curious, how does your preparation change, or does it change at all when you know that you're going to a smaller field, a baseball field, particularly for you playing in wide areas? Does it change anything going into the game, or do you kind of prep the same way?
There's a bit of a difference. We know it's a smaller field, so it'd be naive not to say that there's a change in how you approach the game. But the game's still the same. At the end, it's 11v11, and we have to approach it as such. But understanding that there's going to be tighter spaces, and we just have to find ways to exploit those spaces. As a winger, you want to get more familiar, and we've been doing that with the dimensions on the training pitch. So I think we're fine and we'll be ready.
Tim Sullivan.
If I asked Gary about when Randall comes back, how he's going to kind of fit into the tactical setup that you guys have been operating with. Obviously, he hasn't trained with the first team, I don't think, since he got injured, but in preseason and all that. How did you see him as a player who maybe has a different style than you and Jacob, and how having a different style player when he does come back can kind of impact the way that you guys have a different breadth of ways that you can play?
Yeah, I think Randall's a fine player and does bring a different dimension as well, dropping into pockets or being a bit more central at times and not having to stay on the touchline. Off the left side, I like to do both, be off the touchline and inside. Randall with his right foot, he's fantastic. So, and Shaft with his pace as well. So there's different ways to go about it. I think we can all play different positions. So at the moment, we're focused on the weekend, but obviously when Randall comes back, it'll be a great plus for us to have more firepower going forward. So I'm excited for his return and hope he gets a speedy recovery.
Dre Hills.
Yeah, Fafa, similar to what you just touched on, you play on the left, play on the right now so far for Nashville, particularly with the fullbacks and how you're linking up with Shaq and Dan. You compare and contrast how you feel like you're starting to settle in with both of them as far as combining chemistry, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I'm, it's only a few months in, but as I think I've kind of mentioned briefly in the past, is just getting to know each fullback. And obviously over my career, I've played probably 90% plus on the left side. So naturally it's easier for me to just slip into different areas off the left side and understand what I have to do, especially when getting the ball to my foot and into space. The sprints and cuts are very different. But Shaq and I also have a great partnership and friendship on and off the field as well, so it's easy for us to communicate there at the same time, to get used to it and adapt to playing on the right side as well. So at the end of the day, my biggest thing is to just jump on the field and help the team and be the best that I can be for the team. And if asking me personally, obviously the left side I'm more comfortable, just because I've been there for years. So I'm used to it, but at the end of the day, both wingbacks have done a great job of communicating and making it an easy adjustment to a new club.